degree from the labor of all other animals. For Ingold, then, Marx was not wrong to suggest that only human beings are able to transform nature according to a mental blueprint, but he was wrong to ignore the purposive labor of other animals. But is it true that the ability to plan the transformation of nature is a trait that's exclusive to humans? Until comparatively recently, Gold and Gold explain in their book Animal Architects, only the most unreserved romantics conceived of a role for planning and thought in any brain but ours. But thanks to recent research in cognitive ethology and related fields, our views of other animals are starting to change. Often described as an ecosystem engineer, the beaver is a prime candidate for challenging Marx's views. Describing how beavers excavate their burrows, Gold and Gold observed that imagination, an ability to plan, and a ready willingness to learn from experience seem the most realistic combination of cognitive faculties to generate this aspect of the beaver's life. And this is just the burrow, they add. This kind of recent work in cognitive ethology and related fields suggests that what Marx classified as an exclusively human form of labor may not be exclusive to humans after all. So what do I mean by clinical labor? Hearing guinea pigging described as a form of labor can be somewhat jarring. This is because of its passivity, at least as compared to the more active bodily labor of, say, bodybuilding. Guinea pigs do not do things, and here he's talking about human guinea pigs, Carl Elliott writes, so much as they allow things to be done to them. In addition to enduring any procedures that are performed on their bodies, human guinea pigs in phase 1 clinical trials must also endure being exposed to the risk of an adverse reaction to the experimental drug. For Melinda Cooper, enduring this risk exposure is what defines this peculiar form of labor. Interestingly, she also notes that participation in clinical trials invalidates any distinction between labor power and the body of the laborer. To put this in Marx's terms, the guinea pig's labor consists of participating in the transformation of him or herself into an object of labor, and then enduring the consequences of being utilized as such, including the risk of an adverse reaction and the consequences of any reaction that does occur. Guinea pigging qualifies as labor in Ingold's sense of the term. The human beings, dogs, primates, and rodents who are involved in clinical trials are purposive agents. For their part, non-human subjects experience toxicity testing as something they do and have done to them. Of course, unlike human subjects, they don't worry about the risks to which they're exposed, though apparently they can anticipate certain experimental procedures. When it comes to the most essential aspect of the labor process, however, namely purposefully enduring exposure to an experimental drug and its effects, the participation of non-human subjects in preclinical trials is enough like the participation of human subjects in phase 1 trials that if we're going to call the latter labor, we should probably call the former labor too. Or should we? I want to close with Linda Burke's important question about academic work in critical animal studies. What's in it for the animals, she asks. What, if anything, might be in it for lab animals, politically speaking, when we reformulate what they do and have done to them as a form of labor? Donna Haraway suspects that there might be something. Regarding animals as systems of production and as technologies is nothing new, she writes. Taking animals seriously as workers, without the comforts of humanist frameworks for people or animals, is perhaps new and might help stem the killing machines, she writes. Zipporah Weisberg is less optimistic than Haraway about refashioning the category of labor to include lab animals. In reality, she writes, animals in labs are not workers, not even alienated workers, but worked on objects. To call them anything else, she writes, is to gloss over the brutal reality of the total denial of their ability to act in any meaningful way, namely as self-determining subjects. What I take from Weisberg is a deeper appreciation of the limitations of thinking about the labor process in abstraction from the social relations of production, or in this case, the human-animal relations of production. Although focusing my analysis on the latter, on the labor process itself outside of the social relations that organize it, although that has enabled me to probe the human exceptionalism that lies at the heart of Marx's concept of labor, doing so also risks obscuring what Weisberg describes as the relations of domination to which many lab animals are subjected. So I want to wrap up with a few words about this, building on Foucault. Foucault distinguished power relations from relations of violence and states of domination. Deploying force against someone's body is not an exercise of power, he explained, for power operates on conduct, not the body. As Foucault put it, A man who is chained up and beaten is subject to force being exerted over him, not power. In addition, Foucault wrote, power is exercised only over free subjects and only insofar as they are free. In other words, in power relations, there's necessarily the possibility of resistance. Whereas power relations are fluid and reversible then, states of domination are frozen and fixed. Someone who has no room for maneuver, no capacity to resist, is locked in a state of domination. So if someone were completely at another's disposal and became that person's thing, an object on which that person could wreak boundless and limitless violence, Foucault explained, there wouldn't be any relations of power. And when such extreme domination occurs in the labor process, it transforms the laborer from someone who does things to something to which, or with which, things are done. To put this in Marx's terms, the dominated laborer becomes part of the means of production, an object or an instrument of labor. Claire Palmer has applied Foucault's ideas to human-animal relations. In the most extreme forms of domination, where there's no realistic chance of resistance, the animal who's being dominated is reduced to a mere thing, she explains. This kind of domination is common in human-animal relations of production, including those that occur in some labs. Of course, lab animal is a nebulous category, the precise contours of which depend upon how one defines lab and animal. And however one defines the category, actual lab animals experience a wide range of living conditions and deaths. To speak about the condition of the lab animal, or even of lab animals in general, is thus too imprecise to be of much use in analyzing power relations. We need to examine these relations on a case-by-case basis. With respect to lab animals, this means analyzing power relations on a lab-by-lab or even animal-by-animal basis. That said, one should also avoid fixating on the particular procedures to which a particular lab animal is subjected, or on the animal's living conditions more generally. For even if these allow for the possibility of resistance, the animal may, at the very same time, be utterly expendable. We learned, for example, from a recent UK report that all animals used in toxicity testing are routinely killed immediately at the end of experiments for examination. And as is well known, even perfectly healthy lab animals, including those who have been subjected to no experimental procedures, are routinely killed when they're no longer needed, tossed out like any other piece of useless laboratory equipment. So although certain lab animals may over the course of their lifetimes have opportunities to resist, for many, there's no possibility of life outside the lab. That the lab animal's life is ultimately in the hands of humans reveals the overarching structure of domination within which any resistance is ultimately framed. Moreover, no matter how much any given lab animal may be able to resist on a day-to-day basis, it is also worth remembering that, Rise of the Planet of the Apes notwithstanding, reversing the power relations so that the non-human is in power is quite simply impossible. For real guinea pigs, then, guinea pig resistance is quite limited indeed. Thank you.